Okay, welcome back to the search committee public interview for the chief of police for the City of Pensacola and the Pensacola Police Department. All search committee members are present, as is Mayor Robinson. This portion of the process, the search committee members and the mayor will discuss the candidates. I'm going to turn this session over to the Human Resources Director, Ted Kircher.
Thank you, Gary. Mayor and committee, I thought it might be helpful for us to kind of review how we got to where we are today. We hired public sector search, Gary Peterson's firm, to assist us in this process. We held community forums all over the community to get input about what the citizens, as well as internal staff, would like to see in our new chief. Gary then produced a brochure and a series of announcements that we advertised around the country seeking applicants. We had something over 60 candidates apply for this position. Keith Wilkins and I had a conversation with Gary and reviewed the applications. We consulted with the mayor on these applicants, and we came up with 9 semifinalists. One of the semifinalists chose to drop out of their own accord, and that left us with the 8 semifinalists that we interviewed a couple of weeks ago. From those 8, the selection committee made a recommendation of 3 to the mayor, and those 3 that we've been interviewing in the last couple of days to reach this point in the process. So that's kind of where we are. We've employed a background check firm. When we had our 3 finalists identified, that firm has begun the process of checking references, doing background checks on these 3 candidates, and that will continue as we go forward in this process to finalize the background checks. So that's just a brief recap of how we got to where we are this afternoon here.
Good. So, Mayor, I think we can give you comments with regards or...
My thought was, just to kind of get probably pros and cons. Listen, I told Gary outside, this has been even more successful than I thought, just to see the individuals and see what is happening. And I think to do that with the forum that we did last night, I thought was very impressive. With that said, I know I've talked with y'all during the process, and you had indicated that really any of the 8 could do it. So I knew we had great candidates to begin with. So, but to see the 3 we have, I told Gary, again, you're not going to go wrong with any of the 3. I think the question is, what is the one that's best right for Pensacola? And I think that's what I shared with each of the candidates. Is I think they're all individually great. But one of them, which one is the best one for us? It's not like I looked at 3 of them and I said, oh God, there's only one good one. So that makes an easy choice. This is a tough one, but I think it does allow us to focus on what's best for Pensacola. So, I told Gary, I just thought, if we had pros and cons, what your thoughts were of them, and then I would look to go from there and just, I got some more thoughts and just thinking about what's there, then hopefully try to make a decision tomorrow, at least know where we go. Real quick, at least if we make a selection, Ted, how does this work? Because I guess we advertised a range of what the range runs in. Then do we if we make a selection, do we select one and bring that individual an offer? How does this all work from there?
Yeah, that'd be the next step, Mayor, would be to reach out to whoever you decide. We would make an offer to that individual, and may require some negotiations to reach an agreement, with that individual. We would continue, as I said, the background check process to complete those reference checks and background checks to ensure that obviously we feel pretty good about all 3 of these candidates from that perspective. We want to make sure that there's no surprises out there from that standpoint. So it may take us a few days to get to the final point where we're ready to make a public announcement.
Okay.
Well, I can start off with, if you want to kind of run through each of them, just with some comments. And the first one here in my book, by no particular order, is Mr. Hodges, Booker. I thought he expressed really well the question that we had this morning on bias, recognizing his own biases and how you deal with that. And he talked about unconscious bias and that he trains in that. He's published on that apparently, which to me sounded like he really does, know the subject matter and understands. He had a term he called unconscious mind, which he used. So I think he really does understand how to identify those biases within himself, and how do you address those, because we all do have those biases. So I really thought he had a good answer there on bias. And also I thought he did a good job with some pretty good detail on his accomplishments, where he'd want to be in 1 year, specifically increasing the racial diversity and more mirroring the community like we've all talked about, and specifically going out and asking people to join the police department. I thought that was just, seemed simple, but actually to go out in the community, and like he talked about a women's academy and focusing some of those invitations to, hey, do you want to be a police person? I thought that was simple but innovative still. And then let me see, with Mr. Ortolano, he talked a lot about sort of the same thing with bias and he had I thought a good analysis of sort of the bias preferences and kind of the psychology of bias, which was real interesting. And they both talked about going out and meeting and getting to know and developing friendships with people different than you. And so that you really do experience that, you recognize it, and then you work to change it. And John also talked about, under accountability, kind of the expect-inspect sort of practice. You make your expectations very clear of your personnel, and then you follow up to make sure that they are doing that, and that you don't ignore bad behavior when you see it. So I thought that was very, very positive with him. And then with Mr. Randall, I thought he did a good job on the question with regards to employee engagement and retention. He talked about outside our budget fundraising process through like a police foundation and an awards recognition program, setting the example, monthly forums with the chief, and then a supervisory board that has the chief as their audience. I thought that was a good practice from employee retention. So there's some positive attributes of all three.
Good for me. All right. I'll start in the order of interviews. Eric Randall, I'll start with him, just to finish off with where Keith was, and not to cover some of the same things that I agree with, to make it a little more brief. In the public forum comments, one of the traits, or the traits that were asked for, were inspirational leader and experienced executive. And looking at Eric Randall's resume and his background and some of the descriptions, he definitely, with his background, with the budget that he manages, does have that experience as an executive. That is definitely positive. I think that he, through many of his answers, shows that he can inspire confidence and trust through many of the answers that, and all of the candidates were able to show that as well. I think that those are the benefits that he has. He has a resume that I think could make a difference in the city. And then for, I guess Booker's next, right? For Booker, he brings an engagement that you can feel when you speak with him. I mean, he's definitely has a background in the community, and so does Eric, and so does John. But Booker has a background in the community. He has a plan that he's followed for community engagement. I appreciated that he said that employee engagement is from respect, value, and purpose. And when employees feel that purpose, they're going to want to be engaged and retained. So I appreciated that about him. And then with John, he's got an emergency and disaster management background. He has a background in labor issues, and definitely, like all of the candidates, really has a comprehensive resume and background. I believe that he shows that he showed through examples that he gave all of us in interviews that he is able to be transparent and able to work with his force and also work in the community, and had examples of community engagement.
And did I hear you say you were looking for somebody who would take over emergency management?
That's up to you, Mayor.
Okay, I'll try not to repeat some of the things that Keith and Chief has already mentioned, and in no particular order. I'll start with Booker. So I really like the answer to, and I know you asked for cons. Honestly, I don't think there are any cons with the three of them. Just putting that out there. So the answer to the bias, associating with people from different backgrounds, I think that's very important. I myself have friends from different backgrounds, so I really liked his answer to the bias question. Also, the mission, how you answered the last question regarding mission, vision, values, having shared values. And if someone violates those values, now they've violated our course. So that stood out to me. So I appreciated the answer on that. Regarding Mr. Orlano, John, something that stood out for me was when he mentioned what you permit, you promote. I mean, it was very simple, but it hit home for me. When he used the situation with the taser. Yeah. So, and how he had to correct that, and it takes that. So I really appreciate that. That was a definitely a really good answer for that. And then also when he talked about his first year, grasp the community, reach out to elected officials, clergy, walk the community. So I appreciated that, especially not being from here. I think that'd be great. Regarding Mr. Randall, Eric Randall, one of the pros for him, and I didn't write it down, but he's from here. So I think the fact that he's from Pensacola, I think that's a pro right off the bat because he knows Pensacola. That's just number one. Very important when he talked about, bias, and he put it really simple, sports, which is true. You just, you do have biases, and the way he answered that question, I really appreciated that. His answer regarding accountability, when he said it starts at the top, which is true. We see what's going on nationally now with a lot of police forces. And a lot of folks are looking at the police chiefs. What are they doing within their departments to address the accountability in their departments? So when he says it starts at the top, that's the truth. It starts at the top. So those are just some of my pros with all three of them.
I'm apparently going to be longer-winded. Shocker to all.
Tell me something I didn't know, Susan.
I
Tell me
know,
something I didn't know.
I know. So, just real quick, want to explain kind of in my own head why these three, from the 8 that were there, why did we get to these 3? And my understanding is that we're pretty unanimous among all of us. These 3 just shone.
I think all 3 of you, I was told that all 3 of these were the top 3 of all 5.
Right.
That's correct.
And I think a lot, and I don't want to speak for everyone, but at least a lot that what stood out for me, a couple of different things. One was that they all had more concrete examples. It wasn't just a motto or it's like implicit bias bad. It was, let me explain what I would do, or let me explain what I have done. So it was more concrete in what they described in my estimation. Something else that these 3 candidates have that, again, I like, doesn't mean that it's required or anything, but this is just me. All 3 candidates have had some varied experience in their career. meaning that they've worked in different agencies or they've worked for different employers. My recollection is that Eric Randall worked for the Navy, was in the Navy for some time. He went, he had that military experience before he went into law enforcement. I believe both Booker Hodges and John, I still can't pronounce his last name, Ortolano, that they both have, I think one or both of them has some military experience, but then they both have a variety of experience in law enforcement, different agencies. And the reason that I personally give weight to that is because when someone has had different experiences, they've worked for different employers and different communities, different workplaces, they simply have seen things done differently. They've experienced different things. And so I think they're more apt to bring those different experiences, different ideas to the table when they go into a new place. I'm not saying that it's right or wrong or better or worse, it's just different. And the different perspectives, different ideas and such, I think creates a more creative assessment of situations and a more creative problem solving and attitude towards solutions. So for me, these three rose to the top with those ideas. Going through each one, and I'll try to go in the same order that Keith went just to try to keep some consistency. Booker Hodges, I think he's very energetic, he's direct, he's plain spoken, he comes across with confidence without being arrogant. I liked a lot of his answers, both the first interview and this interview, in the sense of it wasn't just a, like this is what I'm supposed to say sort of answer. Here's concrete examples. Here's things that I've actually done, or this is the way I approached it when I went into this agency as a new higher level position. For him, communication was important, and I'm looking at some of my notes from the first interview as well as the second. Communication was important. Don't manage by memo. He wants to make sure that all through the organization they're getting the information that they need and what they're permitted to have. When we were talking or asking about what about information going up, he stated his 3 rules: no surprises, no surprises, no surprises. And I'm like, as a lawyer, thank you. It's like, I appreciate that. So then he was talking about, we had a question about their, like what sort of difficult political situation had they been involved in? What happened and what did they learn from it? He was talking about an experience that he had with the executive orders coming out of the governor's office during COVID. And that one of the executive orders closed bars and restaurants. Well, Minnesota, I think, like Florida, is a big state that has some cities, some rural areas. Well, apparently he's explaining that some of the rural areas, the rural sheriffs own bars or restaurants. So it's kind of like, oh, that's kind of sticky, So he's explaining his experience there and what happened with that and what he would have done differently. All of us in COVID and the pandemic, it's like, well, my next pandemic, I'm going to do something different. We've all learned something. So, but he explained all of that. Let's see, he likes to build people up, he stated. Again, the core values of the mission and such. He talked about the hiring, that one of the places he worked at, that the jail became a majority minority workforce while he was there, and they increased their minority participation or minority employees. He talked about the Women's Academy that he also described today. And again, with the implicit bias and such, what he described here today, that it's important to go out, meet someone different from you, meet someone who looks different from you, the way, the quote I wrote down from the first one is, it's hard to hate up close. If you know people and you actually get to know them as persons, not just as either a stereotype or impression, that's gonna help break down barriers. Again, I liked the fact that he gives concrete answers. Expensive to replace employees, again, HR, legal, we agree with that. Give the law enforcement officers, employees an opportunity to weigh in. The importance of purpose and respect. When he was describing what he would have, what would it look like in a year under the hypothetical, again, he had some concrete ideas of what he wanted to accomplish in that first year. The increase in diversity, the Public Safety Advisory Committee and such, even if it's something that can't happen or doesn't happen, he's got very concrete ideas of what he wants to see happen. There's a plan there. So I liked all of that regarding Booker. So then, let's see, Eric was next, no, John was next. So with John, what I liked about him from the very first interview, my words, the real deal. He's a real leader. He doesn't just talk the talk, he walks the walk. Every time he answered a question, or it seems like every time he answered a question, he gave concrete examples. And not just concrete examples of what he would do, concrete examples of what he's already done in a different location. Keep in mind that where he is now, Hobbs, New Mexico, is about the same size as our police department here. He talked about knowledge being power, his weekly emails, trying to get word down to throughout the ranks, making sure that everyone's getting information. Asking about, what do you do as far as going up the chain and such. He described what he called the headline test. If there's going to be a headline, I want to know about it. And likewise, my administrator wants to know about it. The mayor, the administrator, it's like, we need to make sure that this is going up. With respect to leadership, he was describing mission first, people always, and explained that what he meant by that was that your people, your employees, that's who you've got to put your focus on, and when you put your focus there, they will follow out with mission, with getting out into the community, with customer service, or however you want to describe that. And then quality of work environment, which he described here today. Again, dignity, respect, making it a place that people don't want to take a vacation from. He talked about the importance of every encounter with a law enforcement officer, that whatever that encounter is, people will take something away from it. And since a lot of people, hopefully, don't have many encounters with law enforcement, then if it's a negative encounter, that may be the only encounter they have for the next 5 years. Or some of us might get pulled over more than others. But it might be something where it's like, you want to make sure every encounter is as good as it can be for what it is. Again, talking about what he has actually done in Hobbs, that he has increased the diversity so it more closely reflects the community, that they are now about 2/3 minority is what I wrote down. While he's been there, law enforcement officers have not left to go to another agency. That law enforcement officers, or I don't know if he said LEO, but personnel have actually come back to the agency while he's been there. And so he's had people that have wanted to come work for him, which I think speaks volumes. He talked about how he wants to, what he would do And he described it, again, this is what he did in Hobbs, this is what he would do here as far as meeting with elected officials, meeting with law enforcement, with leaders, clergymen, and so forth and so on. And one of the things that he said that I don't think I heard from any other candidate was not only meet with these folks, but when he meets with them, ask them, who else should I meet with? So that he keeps expanding out, who are the folks that need to be touched, who are the folks we need to have conversations with. I liked his example of the chair. I mean, it's, it may seem like kind of silly or whatever, but I liked it. I mean, you walk in, you know where you're sitting. You don't have to sit around and say, where am I supposed to be sitting? You walk in and you know. Well, why do you know? Because of your experience. If you've been interviewed before, yep, that one, the microphone right there, that's my seat. I mean, it's just, but we don't think about it. And that in and of itself that's what implicit bias is about. That's what, the subconscious thinking is about, is that you didn't think about it. And for biases, how do you bring that to more conscious level? I liked his story about going out into the community and asking the questions. And the one guy was saying, you didn't ask me, what am I doing? You asked me, how am I doing? And as he said, he wishes he followed up and found out if the guy got the job that he was going to do the interview for. But again, I think he's walked the walk, talked the talk. Last one, Eric Randall. I did make note of the fact that Eric is from here. The fact that he's from here, the fact that he still has family here, I think is relevant insofar as he does have a vested interest here. So I think that is, that's not something to just gloss over or whatever. I don't think it's everything, but I think it's something. Again, he talks about communications being key to relationships. The weekly videos. Eric was one that mentioned, at least in my recollection, he mentioned use of technology a little bit more than others. And whether that was the videos for communication or the app, which I still don't quite understand what it is, but the app that he used to triangulate. Everyone else remembers it. Great. Okay, fabulous. That's why I sometimes do it in groups.
You're the attorney. You're not the app person.
I'm not the app person. I am definitely not the app person. But, just again, bringing a new experience or bringing different experiences. He does, seemingly have some experiences with technology and potentially, for us at least, new ways of using the technology that we may not have considered before. I think he's very passionate about what he does. I think he's passionate about empowering personnel and making everyone feel important and that they want to, giving them the tools to succeed and helping them to actually succeed. One thing that I did write down, and I would want to double check the resume and such, I wrote down that he does not have union experience. And so don't take my word for it. I want to double check that, or someone double check it. But I wrote down that there are no unions in Virginia. And so as I said, someone double check that. But I know, for example, John talked about not just union experience, but having been an FOP representative. He's been on both sides. So that may be something that Eric maybe something that John or Booker has that Eric simply just doesn't have that experience. Diversity and such. He did talk about trying to improve the hiring process. That was one thing I wrote down about him, generally speaking. I think he looks at processes and he wants to figure out how can we improve them. So I think he is always striving to do better, to make it better. Where can that be done? And the example I wrote down was, instead of a 6-month process to hire, he worked to make it more like a 30-day process to hire. The only other thing that I think I'll mention is that compared, I think all three candidates are great. I think compared to the question or the answers that Booker Hodges gave and the answers that John Ortolano gave, I think Eric Randall's answers were not quite as specific or concrete in the answers. Meaning, I think that Booker and John just gave more examples or more specifics about what they have done or what they would do. You know, not just, I'm going to go out into the community and talk to the community. I'm going to go out, I'm going to look for these leaders, and then when I talk to them, I'm going to ask them for more names and look at more leaders. Just a little more information there. You know, but again, I truly think you've got three great candidates in front of you, and you're going to have a hard decision.
Thanks, Susan. If I could just make a comment about the sort of overarching view of the three of them, I think it is the fact that they gave us concrete examples from their experiences. That's what really struck me about the three of them, is they weren't telling us stories about what they might do. It was stories about what they had done. And I think that's what set these three apart, in my mind, from the others that we talked to last time. I'll go through the order that our notebook is in and start with Booker. If I had a phrase to describe Booker, it would be a thought leader. He's very thoughtful, very, I think, astute in his observations about his experiences and what he would bring to them, to the table. So on the employee engagement question, the fact that he talked about employee voice, and then the respect and value purpose comment that Keith mentioned, to me, that's someone who's got some insight into what engagement and retention is kind of all about. And then the question about how he would do in his first year, he gave us milestones. You know, that he would look for a reduction in the quality of life survey results about communities' assessment of law enforcement. He talked about increasing minority hiring. I mean, he had some very thoughtful ideas about what his first year would look like from a success standpoint. So that impressed me. With John, I would describe him as being focused. I think he knows what he wants to get done in his time. He's really can take the experiences he had at Hobbs and can bring those to table and probably build on the things that went well for him in Hobbs. And perhaps I'm sure he's learned a thing or two that he might do differently coming to Pensacola. But I agree that his chair example on unconscious bias was a great way to frame that question, that it was real easy to relate to. You know, we had a colorful local politician who used to talk about putting the goat down where the haze could get to it. Or
Yeah,
put the hay down where the goats could get to it. Yeah, and I thought, well, that's...
Although he went to jail, but we're not going to talk about that.
but it was a good way to think about the question. And so I thought for me, the chair example did that for me with John. And he clearly knows what he wants to achieve. With Eric, for me, what came across clear was his Pensacola connection and his passion. He clearly is passionate about being a public servant, and that really came across clear to me. And the other thing about Eric that was a positive for me was his technology. Nearly every in the semifinalist interviews or the public forum last night or today, he talked about the use of technology, and I really appreciate that approach to looking at innovative ways to do it. So, you know, the passion, the Pensacola connection, and his innovation in technology is something I saw as his strengths.
Well, I asked them, because I was reminded to ask them all the same questions, so I did ask them all the same questions. But my questions, the first one was, I guess, Ted, you and Keith and I were all there when we went to take this the first time, and obviously there was a significant pushback from the lieutenants about even looking elsewhere, and there was a lot of concern about well, what does this do for us, sergeants and lieutenants, and our promotion, our ability to meet up. So one of the main question I asked them was, I need a commitment, because we need the right person here. We're looking for the person that's going to bring the experience and can help us be better. but we're not broken. We don't need to change everything else. We don't need somebody else who's bringing other people in. We have good leaders here. We need to develop them. I need your commitment that you're committed to those lieutenants and sergeants. If they buy in to what you're doing, they have the ability to move up and become lieutenants and captains. And all three of them said yes, and that would be my expectation. They all said, I'm not bringing anybody else with me. You got the talent here. Two, toward that end, commitment to Kevin. I think Kevin is all about PPD. I can't ask for a better person who is concerned about PPD than Kevin Chrisman. I mean, he's impressed me when I first got here. He's the reason that's why he became the deputy chief. And even in this whole thing, he has been about that and asked for that commitment. And they all said absolutely. They all expected to have Kevin and thought he was a great asset to PPD and what he offers. So that was part of it. We talked about being better, and I told them, again, I'm not looking, I think a lot of things about PPD are very good, not just very good, they're great. But there's one area where we've been deficient is really finding a way to make our ranks look like our community and minority recruitment. So I asked them to specifically go over, and talk to me about how they would find ways to, even though they had said some of this up here, how to go about it some more. So we did talk about that. And then lastly, the last question I told them, I said, listen, I'll be very honest with you. I've been in public service for a number of years. I did this, went through this past year, and for my family, it's the right time to get out and right time to go forward. So I'm not going to be getting here, going forward. I believe I have enough time to work with whoever this is to have 18 months to put together a good basis going forward, but I can't guarantee what happens going forward. Do you have a problem with this or do you have a concern? And all three of them, indicated they did not. I mean, they felt like that was enough time for them to do what they wanted to do and achieve, the things that they wanted to achieve. As far as the choice, I don't feel it's a tough choice in the sense that I don't think you're going to go wrong wherever you go. I think there's just more cases of what's the right fit for us. My assessment to Gary that I told out there was to me, and several of you mentioned it, is just the passion that Eric has, and I think the belief he has already in the community, and that ability to build on that within what's here, I think is a real strong asset for him. I think when I look at Booker, it's an incredible, you said confidence and polish. Listen, if the guy told me, he said, we're going into something, some tough situation and we got to suit up and go now, I'd be like, all right, if you're leading it, I'm going with you. I mean, he has that kind of confidence. You just feel like, yep, I'm going to go with you. I mean, it was just, he in some ways, he's just the most polished. And I mean, the things he had is very impressive. And then John's actually done it. John's the one who's actually a chief and has done it and done a lot of the things that we recognize there are going to be challenges coming into a system that has traditionally been internal candidate promotion within and trying to take on that system. I mean, he actually has done it and accomplished the things that we believe could be better, because we believe that PPD is an incredible force already, and it just really needs a way to look at it be better. So that's my assessment of the three of them. I don't think we can go wrong in any direction. I think the question I'd like to hear is just verifying, that whatever we hear back from the stuff that you've asked out there and everything along those ends, and then from there it's just us making a call. I don't, Ted, I don't know, I know they met at length with PPD, and did you get any comments or any comments from PPD?
I've only had a chance to just kind of have a cursory look at the comments from the town hall yesterday afternoon, so I think we're going to try to compile those and see if we've got some themes. I would like to follow back up with the command staff. You know, they had lunch with the candidates yesterday. I've not had a chance to follow up with them yet, so I don't know what their impressions were of the three. So those are 2 data points I'd like to get before you.
They asked me, and I clearly said, we're not making a decision today. I'd like to make it maybe by the end of tomorrow, but I told him, I said, it very well could be Monday. So the last thing I asked him, I said, do you have any questions for me? And everybody was like, when do you think you'll have an answer? And that's what I kind of told him. I said, it's definitely not going to be today. I would love to have it by the end of tomorrow, but if it, it could be the first of the week before we have something. So that was what I communicated to all 3 of them.
Okay.
In that communication. So, that's my thought, and at least all 3 of them gave me the answer that I wanted to know, because we did make that commitment to the lieutenants. We did make that commitment to them that we were looking to get, if we're going to get from the outside, we're going to get somebody who's not looking to bring everything new in. It's looking to take what's there and figure out how to make it better and give those officers the opportunity to be upwardly mobile from here. And so, that was one of the discussions that I wanted to have. And if they didn't give me the right answer on that, that they weren't going to be making, what the decision that I wanted. So, I think from that end, that was one of the things I definitely wanted to protect and hear the things we thought and we had discussed with PPD.
We'll get those. I'll get that for you probably by the end of the day today. Mayor.
And then, also in the interviews yesterday, in the round robin session, Cedric Alexander was one of those stops, and Cedric is going to provide similar. He'll provide his comments also.
Yeah. I got a few different people who listened last night and commented. I thought, again, the real winner out of this whole thing on everything was just the process and what the community had a chance to see, the things that were out there that can be done. And I got more comments along those lines of just how impressed people were that watched from the outside. And I thought it was incredibly impressive. But like I said last night, I said just as impressive as they are, the force that they're leading is just as impressive. Like I said, they were featured very well on Dateline on Friday night and made Pensacola look very good in what we have.
Yep.
Well, all right. I'll look to get that information back from you and then make that decision. Gary, is there anything else you had to?
No, Mayor, thanks everyone for their thoughtful comments. And I just want to say that for the public, this concludes the search committee interview process. And,
And we're all going to the Chick-fil-A trailer.
Right.
Gary, I'd just like to say thank you so much for leading this process. It was tremendous. We all learned something. It really exhibited the excellence of law enforcement and brought out the best. So we really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no. Like I said, I feel like that was the real winner, was the community out of going through this process.
Yeah.